Hey, I better know what you're thinking. What exactly is the Jigsaw teaching technique?
Yes, that is exactly what I'm thinking.
The Jigsaw classroom is a cooperative learning technique that reduces racial conflict among school children, promotes better learning, improves student motivation, and increases enjoyment of the learning experience.
Cool. So how exactly does it do that?
Well, this is a technique that was developed in the early 1970s by Elliot Arnson and his students at the University of Texas and California. Since then, this technique has been found to be quite successful. It requires interdependence among students, which makes this a unique learning method, and it is this interdependence that encourages the students to take an active part in their learning.
Can you tell me more about Elliot Aronson?
Yes. Elliot Aronson is currently a professor emeritus at the University of California, Santa Cruz. He has long-standing research interests in social influence and attitude change, cognitive dissonance, research methodology, and interpersonal attraction. Professor Aronson's experiments are aimed both at testing theory and at improving the human condition by influencing people to change dysfunctional attitudes and behaviors. And now, the man himself will give us a quick history of how the Jigsaw method was created. The Jigsaw classroom was first used in 1971 in Austin, Texas. My graduate students and I had invented the Jigsaw strategy that year, as a matter of absolute necessity to help defuse an explosive situation. The city's schools had recently been desegregated, and after observing what was going on in classrooms for a few days, my students and I concluded that intergroup hostility was being fueled by the competitive environment of the classroom, and thus the Jigsaw method was created as a way of uniting students and making them work towards a common goal.
That's super cool. So, how does this method work?
Here's how the Jigsaw classroom method works. There's two variations. It might sound familiar to you. The teacher divides the class into equal-sized groups under one umbrella topic. Each group is given information about a subtopic, a different subtopic for each group. For example, an umbrella topic could be School of Gender, Race, and Nations, and the subtopics include Black Studies, Indigenous Nation Studies, Chicano-Latinx Studies, and Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. Each student becomes familiar with their subtopic. The students are rearranged so that new groups are formed with one representative from each subtopic in each new group. The students report back to each other about what they learned. Alternatively, a step can be added at the beginning of this whole process. Students start in groups where they are each given a different subtopic within their initial groups. They become familiar with their piece and then gather with others in the class with the same subtopic. After discussion with that gathering, they meet again with their initial groups and report on their subtopic. This just adds a step of collaboration. So I know what the method is, but how do we know that it actually works?
One of the first empirical studies that was conducted supporting this theory was done by Diane Bridgman. Dr. Bridgman took a group of 150 fifth grade students and randomly sorted them into three groups: a traditional classroom environment, more lecture-based; a smaller, more inclusive classroom, smaller class size and more teacher involvement; and the experimental Jigsaw classroom. At the end of the school year, the students were all shown a cartoon that depicted a young child seeing their father leave on an airplane at the airport, and he gets sad. Later in the cartoon, a male person comes by and gives the package a gift sent from their father. The package contains an airplane that looks just like the one their father left on, and the child starts to cry. At the end of the cartoon, the students were asked what the male person thought about the crying child. According to the male person, why was the child crying? Students in the traditional and the smaller inclusive classroom setting overwhelmingly responded that the male person would think that the child was crying because they missed their dad that flew away on the same plane that they already saw their dad leave on. They were unable to shift their perspective away from what they knew about the story. The students in the Jigsaw classroom, however, overwhelmingly responded that the male person would not know why the child was crying. This helped to show that not only were children learning more effectively based on standardized testing scores, but were actually learning to become more empathetic to other people.